Why was she shaking if she had trained for this all her life? The phone screen glowed in the dark room, its light painting her face in sharp angles. The message was short, too short. "They're watching me." 3 words that pulled her out of the quiet, ordinary rhythm she'd tried so hard to build. 3 words that told her peace had been nothing more than camouflage, fragile as thin glass. She rose from the edge of her bed, bare feet brushing the cold floorboards of her cabin. Outside, the Tennessee forest stood silent, mist rising between the trees, branches swaying gently under a pale moon. Nothing about the night looked threatening. But she knew better. Stillness could hide teeth. She wasn't supposed to be this person anymore. Not the soldier, not the pilot, not the sniper. She had built this cabin with her own hands, carved tables and chairs from fallen oak, taught herself to live in rhythms of wood smoke and silence. A woman disappearing into the woods, growing older quietly, forgotten by those who once whispered her call sign. But now, her daughter's words cut that life in two. She went to the bookshelf, the one built deeper than it appeared. A hand brushed along spines of books no one ever read, fingers stopping at the third from the right. A subtle push, a muted click. The false wall opened with practiced ease, revealing the weapons she told herself she'd never touch again. Her hand hovered. For years she had chosen chisels over rifles, sandpaper over steel. She told herself she had shed that skin, but in her blood, in her bones, it was still there. The stillness of a shooter's breathing, the patience of an operative waiting for shadows to shift, the ache of watching through glass scopes as lives balanced on her fingers' pressure. Her reflection in the glass door caught her off guard, not the young officer she remembered, sharp-eyed and steel-spined. Now faint lines shaped her face, hair pulled back with streaks of silver. A woman marked by survival but softened by years pretending to be someone else. Could she become that ghost again? Did her daughter even want that? The forest outside shifted, just barely. A glint like glass catching moonlight, too deliberate to be fireflies or deer. She didn't hesitate. The rifle slid from its place into her hands with an ease that startled her. Weight remembered, balance familiar. In seconds she was at the door, barefoot on the porch, rifle angled low but ready. The movement was gone now, but she felt the presence. The forest wasn't hers tonight. Her phone buzzed again. "Mom, please hurry." The message burned. She lowered the rifle, and in that lowering she made a decision. Whatever she thought she had escaped, whatever past she had buried under trees and solitude, it was here. And her daughter, Rebecca, stood in the crosshairs. As she locked the cabin and shouldered her pack, a memory slipped through. Her daughter at 16, watching her walk away into the military silence she thought was safety. The girl's face had been proud but wounded, confused by a mother who hugged too quickly and disappeared too often. And now, years later, Rebecca had a daughter of her own, an 8-year-old girl with a smile too bright for the world they lived in. The thought of that child in danger brought something back she hadn't felt in decades, fear sharper than bullets. She slid behind the wheel of her truck, engine rumbling to life. For years, she had driven this road only to fetch lumber, groceries, or the rare visit to town. Tonight, it was different. Tonight, it was the road back into a war she thought was over. The miles blurred. Pines on either side leaned like sentinels, their shadows racing past her windows. She gripped the wheel, mind running faster than the engine. Marcus Blackwood. That name hadn't crossed her lips in 30 years, but she knew it was at the center of this storm. A man whose brother she had eliminated on a mission that should have stayed buried forever. A boy who had watched through the scope of his own rage, growing into the kind of predator who waited decades for vengeance. And now he was here, wearing a new name, hiding in plain sight, walking the streets of Oak Ridge with the arrogance of a man who believed time was his weapon. Her daughter didn't know. She didn't know the truth about her mother's missions, the blood that clung to them, the enemies left unfinished. She only knew her mom as the absent one, the figure who returned for birthdays like a shadow through the door, who never stayed long enough to explain. Rebecca had built her own life teacher, mother, widow. She had already buried a husband taken by the drug wars that tore through their town, and now danger circled her again. Would Rebecca even want her mother there? The truck curved down into the valley, headlights cutting through mist. The town emerged, quiet houses, a school whose halls she remembered walking during parent-teacher nights, the same diner with neon lights buzzing. It looked ordinary, but under the surface it had rotted. She could feel it. At a red light she stopped. Her phone buzzed once more. This time not words, a photo, blurry, rushed, but clear enough. A black SUV parked near the school. A man in sunglasses, face turned toward the building. Watching, waiting. Her grip tightened on the phone. The light turned green. She didn't move. She thought of all the times she had steadied her breathing, slowed her pulse, waited for the perfect shot. That patience had kept her alive in deserts, jungles, and cities where enemies spoke in languages she never learned. Tonight, she needed that patience again. Only this time it wasn't for herself. It was for her daughter. Her voice was low as she whispered to no one, to the silence, to the night itself. "You picked the wrong damn girl." And she pressed the gas, driving straight into the danger she had been running from all her life. Why did she drop the picture before she could send it? Moonlight slipped through her rear-view mirror, fractured by the red taillights of a car parked too close. She stared into that mirror as if it were a window into her past, into a version of herself who believed everything could be fixed with discipline, with orders, with bulletproof resolve. But the past has a way of breaking through. She blinked and the photo slipped from her grip, falling to the passenger seat. Rebecca's child, her grandchild, playing in the yard, laughing, innocence in motion. She caught it by reflex, pressed it against her chest. Her heart thudded, protect. The road was silent behind her, just the hum of tires on asphalt, the whisper of engine work she remembered in her bones. She'd been trained for nights like this, but training assumes you know everything in advance. Training never tells you the stakes are someone you love. She pulled off the road, engine idling in the small shoulder space. Trees leaned in like spectators. The forest watched. She placed the photo on the dash, face up. Smiled lightly, Rebecca's child, the bright eyes, the soft curls, a beacon. Her phone buzzed. Message, I hear them now. She pressed her lips together. Anxiety rose. She'd hoped she was overreacting. Hoped this was paranoia, an old operative's dread whispering in her ears. But something about Rebecca's tone, so quiet, so afraid, told her this was real. She inhaled deeply, letting the chill air fill her lungs. Let the memory of her last mission, the one that changed everything, settle in. The heat, the acrid smoke, the trembling in her hands as she killed because she had to, because there was no choice. This was no longer about orders or team objectives. This was about the map she'd drawn with blood and regret, about the wrong she'd done, the lives she'd shaped. Why was she still chasing shadows? Because shadows are always chasing her. She stepped out of the truck, bare feet on dew-soaked ground. Already the night smelled of pine and damp leaves. She moved toward the edge of the forest, the darkness tight as a noose. She could hear muted footsteps, distant, out of sync with any animal or wind. She crouched behind a felled log, gun at ready, eyes scanning. A rustle, one smooth silhouette stepping through trees, a man's voice low passing by the road, unmarked SUV in view, headlights off, darkness pulling shapes into silhouettes. Her mind surged with images she'd suppressed. Desert heat, snipers, scopes, pulling the trigger with trembling certainty. She told herself those days were over, but reflexes don't lie. She raised the rifle. Just a glimpse, cotton shirt, the glint of a watch, steel in his belt. Marcus Blackwood, or someone like him. Her breath caught. The weight of infinity hung in that moment between firing and hesitation. She didn't shoot, not yet, waiting, listening, watching. Inside, she felt torn. Duty whispering, end this now. Love screaming, preserve her daughter's peace. She recalled the night before Rebecca's wedding years ago. She had to leave for deployment. Rebecca had asked why she couldn't stay. Her answer had been a lie that the world needed her. Rebecca said she was the brave one. A burst of pride and guilt had collided in her chest, and neither granted release. She steadied herself. The rustle again. The shadow moved, not toward the house, toward a side street. A figure ducked behind a wall. She saw the movement, quick, practiced, not a beginner. She slipped back to the truck silently, gathering what she needed: gloves, flashlight, the small medkit she still carried. Adrenaline pumped in her throat, memory humming like a beast awakened. She thought, this isn't who I want to be, but she knew. This is the only self she still has left to offer. The house was dark, porch light gone. Windows shuttered from inside except one sliver where curtains hung slightly open. Rebecca's silhouette appeared, then gone. She's listening. She's waiting. She crept toward the door, hardwood floor cool beneath her socks. She placed the light by the door frame, a soft beam, no flare. Listened. No voices, no children crying, silence heavy enough to choke. Behind the curtain, a movement, a shape between shadows. She advanced quietly, hand against the frame, rifle clasped low. She marveled at how fragile normality could be. A living room, family photos, toys on the floor. Her heart both broke and hardened. She saw Rebecca, eyes wide, then two men stepping forward, one shaking, the other silent. The silent one was the watcher, the man from the forest, Marcus. "Mom," Rebecca's voice cracked, fear, hope, confusion. She didn't hesitate. The rifle's barrel blocked the entry. "Stay back." Her voice low, metallic, but her hand shook. Marcus raised his hands as though he expected negotiation. "You don't want this," he said. He smiled, cold, rehearsed. "You've spent too many years running, hiding." She locked her eyes on his. Recognition. The past collapsing. The missions, the loss, the reckoning she had hoped to bury. Rebecca clutched her daughter behind her. The child's eyes were wide, reflecting the flashlight's beam. She swallowed. Guilt, for every moment she'd been gone, for every lie she told, for the choice she made when she thought it was the only one. She thought, I can't let this become another regret. Marcus laughed quietly. I followed you here, I watched you fade into the woods, and now you defend with gun in hand. That's courageous or desperate. She tightened her grip, not desperate, determined, but anguish cut her throat. Why now? She asked, her voice honest. Closure, he said, retribution. She felt something tear inside her, anger, fear, sorrow. Rebecca's daughter whimpered. He stepped toward them, just a half step. Time slowed. Memory flooded, the mission in Kabul, the kid in the alley. She had taken the shot anyway. The image of that child haunted her in dreams. She wanted to be better. She had tried to escape, but here was the world dragging her back in. She raised herself, body braced. One movement could shatter everything. She closed her eyes for a second, letting courage settle like stone in her chest. She opened them. The muzzle of her rifle gleamed faintly in the darkness. Get away, she said. The silent man paused. Marcus's smile flickered. Rebecca stepped forward. Don't, the woman whispered. Lightning forked overhead. The first roll of thunder shook the house. Rain began to spit. Marcus turned, decided, his hand against something at his belt. A gun, shovel, she couldn't tell. Between them stood her daughter and granddaughter. The moral line she could not cross lay cathartic and clear. She raised the rifle, not to kill, to stop, to protect. A shot cracked. The silent man dropped. The world exhaled. Rebecca gasped. The child screamed. She stood there, chest heaving, rain mingling with tears. She didn't feel brave. She felt broken, proud, terrified, alive. Marcus stared, unbelieving. He stepped back. The rain soaked him. Reality sank in. He had lost. She thought of all the moments she'd walked away, hopping to atone, hopping to make life gentle, simple, hopping to matter. Rebecca dropped to her knees, gathering her daughter close. Mother stepping forward to wrap her arms around them, both trembling. She lowered the rifle. The weight in her shoulders collapsed. Marcus fled into the forest. Rain hid his tracks. She did not chase. Inside, Rebecca pressed the child against her, muttered thanks, her voice muffled. She watched them, saw the safety in their eyes, the fragile peace returning. She sighed a long, ragged breath. Relief, sorrow, love all tangled together. She knelt beside them. "I'm here," she said, her voice cracked. "I won't run any more." Under the storm, she felt hope, not the naive kind, the kind born in sacrifice, in standing up when your worst fears are true. She held them close. She had become the shield not because she was born for this, because she chose this. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Why did the town look so ordinary when everything inside it was poisoned? Morning light spilled over Oak Ridge like nothing had happened, like the night before wasn't stained by shadows and rain. Cafes opened. Children in backpacks rushed across streets. Church bells tolled faintly in the distance. But she knew better. Normal was a disguise. Behind it, something was moving, patient, methodical, waiting for them to look away. She parked her truck a block from the school. From this angle she could see the red brick walls, the tired playground, the flag swaying lazily in the September breeze. And there, an SUV again. Same model, same tinted glass. Its engine off, its silence louder than any alarm. Her daughter, Rebecca, stood by the school entrance. Not the child she once left behind, but a woman now teacher, mother, widow, shoulders square, jaw tense. She looked ordinary too, carrying papers tucked against her chest, walking with purpose. But the way she glanced over her shoulder told the truth. She felt it too, the watching. She didn't call out, not yet. Instead, she walked slowly, blending in with the few parents still lingering. Each step closer was a war inside her. The soldier pushing forward, the mother hesitating, afraid her presence would only ignite more danger. Rebecca spotted her first. Their eyes locked, a silent storm between them. Questions, anger, gratitude, all unspoken but pulsing. "You came," Rebecca whispered when they finally stood close enough. "You called," she answered simply. Rebecca's lips pressed tight. For years she had carried her grief alone, her husband lost in a raid gone wrong, her town swallowed by drugs, her students falling to poison slipped into their lives. And when she had called before, no one had listened, except last night, except her. But there was something she hadn't told Rebecca yet, not about Marcus Blackwood, not about the ghosts circling their lives. That truth was a knife she hadn't found the courage to draw. "Emily safe?" she asked quickly. Rebecca nodded. "With Mrs. Holloway for now," she paused. "But they broke into my house last week. Took my laptop, files, they knew exactly what to look for." The words landed heavy. Not random, not reckless, targeted, calculated. Her chest tightened. The world had shifted. This wasn't just about Marcus. This was about what Rebecca had uncovered, something that tied him to this town, to these children, to the rotting heart behind the polite smiles of its leaders. "I tried going to the principal," Rebecca went on, voice low, almost breaking. "I tried the police. No one wanted to hear it. Too much money flowing in, too many friends shaking Shaw's hand." Shaw, the new name Marcus had wrapped around himself like clean clothes. A businessman, a benefactor, a liar. "You should have told me sooner," she said softly. Rebecca's eyes flashed. "Would you have come?" The question cut deep. She didn't answer, couldn't, because both of them knew the truth she might not have. For years she had convinced herself that staying away was safer, but safety had never been real. Distance was only another kind of wound. A bell rang. Students shuffled inside. The SUV's engine turned over with a low growl, then pulled away, disappearing down the street. She followed it with her eyes until it vanished. "We need to move," she whispered. "They won't stop." Rebecca stood frozen for a beat. Then with a slow exhale she nodded. "Then tell me everything, Mom. No more secrets." The words pressed against her chest like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. But the time for silence had ended. The war she thought she had buried 30 years ago had come home. And this time it wasn't just her life on the line. It was her daughter's, her granddaughter. She looked once more at the school, at the children rushing past open doors, at the ordinary rhythm of a town pretending nothing was wrong. Then she turned away, jaw set. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. Why did silence feel louder than the sirens flashing outside her daughter's home? The truck skidded to a stop. Blue and red lights spun across the neighborhood, painting the quiet houses in chaos. Two cruisers blocked the driveway. Officers moved in and out of the front door, their radios hissing with clipped messages. She was out before the engine stilled, boots pounding the pavement. "Ma'am, stay back." An officer's hand shot out palm flat. "My daughter lives here," she said. Her voice left no room for argument. The officer's eyes shifted, softening with recognition. "You're Rebecca's mother." He lowered his hand but didn't relax. "She's inside, shaken, not hurt." The words hit like a half-breath of relief. She pushed past, every step quick, her body tense, braced for the sight of blood. Inside, the living room was chaos. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the floor, a bookshelf toppled. Rebecca sat on the couch, pale, arms wrapped around herself. A detective leaned forward in a chair, notebook open, pen tapping. "Mom," Rebecca's voice cracked when she saw her. She stood, hesitated, then crossed the space and clung to her tightly. The hug was awkward, desperate. Years of distance dissolved in that instant, leaving only fear and recognition. She held her daughter, staring over her shoulder at the wreckage. Not random. No overturned TV, no smashed jewelry box, no missing cash. Purposeful, targeted. The detective cleared his throat. "Break-in." She came home, found the mess, called it in before stepping inside. Smart. His eyes cut to her. Laptop's gone, file box too, nothing else touched. Her chest tightened. Files meant knowledge. Laptop meant proof. Whoever had been here wasn't after valuables. They wanted silence. Rebecca pulled back, anger flaring through her fear. They knew exactly where to look. Her mother's jaw clenched. Emily. At Lily Parker for a sleepover. Rebecca exhaled, relief mingled with guilt. Safe for now. She nodded once, though inside her pulse thudded with fresh dread. The men hadn't come for money. They had come for leverage. Information first, people next. The detective scribbled something down, then looked up again. "Interesting timing," he said. "You arriving today just as this happens." His tone was flat but his eyes sharp. She met his stare without blinking. Timing has nothing to do with it. The threat has everything to do with her. Rebecca stepped in quickly, her voice strained. "Detective Palmer, my husband said you were the most thorough man on the force. Please, focus on Shaw, on his men." Palmer's shoulders eased slightly at the mention of her late son-in-law. He nodded. "We'll do what we can, but Shaw's got friends, high ones. That makes this messy." "Messy?" Rebecca muttered. "Kids are dying and you call it messy." Silence dropped heavy. The detective shut his notebook. "I'll be in touch." He left, but the shadow of doubt lingered in the air. Her mother studied the wreckage again, eyes sweeping like a soldier reading terrain. She felt the old instincts rising, unbidden. Entry point, exit point, timing, intent. Everything about the break-in screamed precision. They weren't guessing. They were signaling. Rebecca's hand found hers. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why suddenly appear after months of silence? Why are Frank and Reverend Green circling around me like I'm a target? What aren't you telling me?" The words struck with more force than any bullet. For years she had carried the secret alone, what she had done in Nicaragua, the Blackwood name she had branded with blood. She had thought distance would shield her daughter. Instead, it had only left her unprepared. She wanted to lie, wanted to tell Rebecca that everything would be fine, that she would handle it, that no past could reach them. But lies were what had gotten them here. She looked at her daughter. The same fire in her eyes, the same stubbornness in her jawline, the same courage she had once carried in her own 20s. A mirror. She exhaled, steady but heavy. You might want to sit down. And for the next hour, the house became a confessional. She told Rebecca what no one else had heard, about missions buried under classified files, about jungles and deserts where her name wasn't a name but a call sign whispered like a shadow, about the shot that ended Carlos Blackwood's empire and the boy who had watched it from the trees, vowing revenge. Rebecca sat motionless, arms crossed tight, eyes wet but unblinking. The words landed like stones in water, ripples spreading, breaking apart old illusions. All these years, Rebecca finally whispered, I thought you were just broken by grief, that you left because you couldn't handle us. But it wasn't grief, was it? It was fear. You were hiding. She didn't answer right away. Couldn't. Silence was its own confession. You missed my graduation, Rebecca pressed. My wedding. You came back only for funerals. I thought you didn't care enough to stay. Her voice cracked, raw. But the truth is, you didn't trust me enough to know, to choose. The accusation cut clean. She had no defense, only regret. I thought distance meant safety, she said softly. I was wrong. Rebecca's lips trembled. She looked away, then back. Well, it didn't keep us safe, did it? And now Emily's in danger too. The room fell silent, the weight of truth pressing down. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed faintly, then faded. Rebecca leaned forward, voice lower, sharper. Shaw's donation to the school tomorrow, it isn't charity. It's cover. He's embedding himself so deep no one can touch him. Her mother nodded slowly. Then we'll pull him out. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. How? She felt something shift inside her. The soldier reawakened. The mother hardened. The ghost she thought she had buried rose again, steady and cold. We start, she said, voice like stone, by protecting Emily. Rebecca swallowed, the tension in her shoulders stiff but laced with something else. Hope. Outside, the lights from the police cars dimmed. The neighborhood quieted, but inside, something had been set in motion. A truth unburied, a bond repaired in fire, and a war reignited. Why did the alarm in her chest sound, louder than the police scanner crackling in Frank's hand? The old truck groaned as it climbed the hill toward Frank's sporting goods store, headlights throwing long streaks across shuttered storefronts. Beside her, Rebecca sat stiff, her duffel bag clutched like a lifeline. She looked less like the teacher she was and more like the soldier's daughter she had always been. Eyes sharp, jaw set, questions burning unspoken. Frank pushed the door open before they'd even parked. His frame filled the entrance, his gray crew cut and battered flannel backlit by the warm glow of the shop. Inside, now. His voice was tight, urgent. The moment the lock clicked behind them, Frank tossed a battered police scanner onto the counter. Static, voices, clipped codes. Then the words, disturbance at Ridgeway, possible child abduction. Rebecca froze. Ridgeway, that's the Parker's street. Emily's at Lily's. The air drained from the room. For a second no one moved. Then training swallowed panic. She shoved the rifle strap over her shoulder and grabbed Frank's truck keys. We move now. Rebecca was already running. They covered the distance in minutes that felt like years. Every second was an eternity. The Parker house came into view, front door ajar, porch light swaying. Too quiet, too still. Stay behind me, she ordered, voice low but edged with steel. Rebecca didn't argue, not this time. Inside, the scene was a nightmare drawn in silence. Mrs. Parker on the floor, bruise swelling at her temple. A chair overturned. A faint scent of chloroform clinging to the air. Rebecca dropped beside the woman, lifting her gently. Karen, where are the girls? Where's Emily? The neighbor's eyes fluttered open, dazed. Men, 3 men, said they were from the school. Emily knew. She grabbed Lily and ran out the back. Brave, so brave, her voice broke. Did they take them? Relief punched through the dread. No, Rebecca whispered, stroking the woman's hair. They ran. She was already moving, out the back door down the yard. Mud softened by last night's storm-held footprints, small, hurried, weaving toward the broken slats of the fence. She crouched low, touched the soil, still fresh, still alive. The creek, Rebecca panted behind her. They play there, it runs to the park. They sprinted, boots slipping in mud, branches clawing at their clothes. She scanned as she moved, broken twigs, a ribbon snagged on a branch, small handprints in damp clay. The trail of courage. And then, two small figures huddled in the shadow of the slide at the empty park. Emily, Rebecca's cry split the night. The girls scrambled out, sprinting toward her. Emily launched into her mother's arms, sobbing, shaking. Lily clung close, eyes wide and terrified. "You were so brave," Rebecca whispered, pressing kisses into Emily's hair. So brave." She scanned the perimeter, rifle raised, senses burning. Relief was dangerous. It made you slow. And the silence here was too heavy. Headlights cut the darkness. Not one set, two. Black SUVs rolling up smooth as predators, doors already opening. Her heart stopped. And then she saw him. Marcus Blackwood. Time had carved his face, but his eyes burned with the same venom as 30 years ago. He stood tall, flanked by armed men, the stormlight reflecting in his smile. Rebecca's grip tightened on her daughter. "Mom." Her voice was steady, quiet, final. "Take the girls, bathrooms, lock the door. Don't come out unless you hear me." Rebecca hesitated, horror in her eyes. "Go now." She stepped forward into the open, her rifle low but ready, her body still, her breath calm. Blackwood stopped 20 feet away. The years had not softened him, they had sharpened him. "You're a difficult woman to find," he called. His voice carried, oily and smooth, but not impossible. "You should have stayed buried," she said. He laughed softly. 30 years I've thought of this moment. 30 years of prison walls, of dreams soaked in blood. My brother's blood, your bullet." He spread his arms as though the whole town belonged to him. "Now you'll know what that feels like." She shook her head once. "Your brother chose his path just like you did." His smile thinned. "And now your daughter, your granddaughter, will pay the price." Her jaw locked. "You picked the wrong damn girl." Before another word could fall, sirens wailed. Cruisers appeared, tires screaming. Blackwood didn't flinch. "My police," he sneered. "My town." But when the doors opened, it wasn't Chief Wilson. It was Detective Palmer, gun drawn, hands where I can see them. The air cracked. Blackwood's men shifted, hands twitching near weapons. Ray's, his lieutenant, went for his waistband. In seconds, the night exploded. Gunfire tore the silence. Screams echoed off steel. She moved without thought, shoving Blackwood down, pinning him against the dirt as Palmer's men traded fire with the others. Bullets sparked off metal benches. One man fell. Ray's hit the ground bleeding. Another surrendered under Palmer's aim. Blackwood writhed beneath her, blood on his lip from the slam of her rifle stock. "This changes nothing," he hissed. "I have contingencies, people you don't even know. This isn't over." She pressed close, her voice sharp and quiet enough only for him. "Then pray it is, because if you touch my family again, there won't be a cell deep enough to save you." Palmer's men cuffed him, dragged him upright. Blackwood's eyes never left hers, burning with a promise of vengeance. "Grandpa." The word cut through everything. She turned. Emily tore out of the bathroom, running into her arms before Rebecca could stop her. She froze, heart stuttering, then wrapped her granddaughter close. "You saved us," Emily whispered, her small voice muffled against her chest. She closed her eyes, the ache inside her cracked open. "Your mom did the saving," she murmured. "She's the hero." Rebecca joined them, tears shining but unshed, her face both broken and strong. "He's not done, is he?" She looked back at Blackwood being shoved into the cruiser. His smirk hadn't faded. "No," she said softly, "this was only the first move." The words weren't a warning, they were a vow. Why did the courthouse steps feel more dangerous than any battlefield she had ever crossed? The town gathered in knots that morning, pulled by the news like moths to flame. Marcus Blackwood, paraded in cuffs, jaw bruised from the slam of her rifle, flanked by officers who weren't sure if they were protecting him or the people from him. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, voices rose. She stayed back, blending into the edges of the crowd. She knew better than to believe this was victory. Blackwood's smirk hadn't faltered all night, not even as Palmer's men shoved him into holding. Smirks like that meant something waited beneath the surface, strings tied to men in suits, money passed in envelopes, secrets kept in silence. Rebecca stood beside her, one arm wrapped around Emily's shoulders. The child clung close, eyes darting nervously at the noise. She tried to smile down at her granddaughter, but it felt brittle, forced. Emily wasn't fooled. Children rarely were. "Is he going to prison?" Emily whispered. Her chest tightened. She wanted to lie, wanted to say yes, wanted to give the girl the peace she deserved. But lies had poisoned enough already. "He's going to try not to," she said gently, "but we're going to make sure he does." Emily nodded, small but fierce, as though courage could be borrowed if she said nothing more. Rebecca glanced sideways, her jaw tight. "You feel it too, don't you? This isn't over." She gave a slow nod. Blackwood never moved without a net. If he's here, it's because he wants to be seen. Rebecca frowned. "Then what's the part we're not seeing?" The answer came hours later, when Frank placed a thin manila envelope on the table of his back office. His eyes were heavy, the look of someone who had dug up truth and hated what he found. "I pulled what I could," he said quietly. "Financial records, property deeds, some chatter intercepted from Shaw's people. You were right. He wasn't after drugs anymore. Not just drugs." She opened the file. Rows of numbers, transactions coded through shell companies, hospitals, private security firms, shipping containers logged as medical supplies. Rebecca leaned over her shoulder. "Organ harvesting," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "He's running children through this town, pretending it's scholarship programs, pretending it's community outreach, and they vanish." Her stomach turned. The lines of the report blurred for a moment. She thought of Emily's small hand clutching her own, thought of every mission where she had pulled a trigger to stop something just like this. But this wasn't overseas. This wasn't nameless terrain under foreign sun. This was here, in her daughter's town. Frank exhaled hard, rubbing his face. "Shaw owns the council. He's bought the police chief. Hell, he's got the Reverend blessing his charity drives. It's a web. You cut one strand, 10 more hold." Rebecca's voice sharpened. "So what do? Sit here while Emily's friends disappear, while the school takes blood money?" She placed the folder down, her hand firm, her voice low and calm. "No, we don't sit. We map the web. And then we cut where it bleeds the most." Rebecca's eyes searched hers, a question trembling just beneath the anger. "And what about Emily? What if they come again?" The question tore at her. Fear had always been easier to face when it was her own. But when it was for the child, the granddaughter she had barely known, the one who had looked at her with trust after a night of terror, it was unbearable. She reached across the table, laid her hand over her daughter's. "We shield her, every second, until this ends." Rebecca blinked hard, tears threatening but held back. For a moment the two of them, mother and daughter, sat in silence, the years of distance folding inward. Later, when the shop had gone quiet and Frank had gone home, she sat alone with the folder spread before her. She traced the names, the numbers, the paths of corruption. Each line was a reminder that monsters didn't always wear uniforms or wave flags. Sometimes they wore suits, smiled in churches, handed out scholarships. And for the first time in years, she felt the soldier in her not as a curse but as a necessity. She couldn't undo the past, but she could stand in the present. She could act. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. No words, just a picture. Emily at school, playing on the swings. A red mark circled her face. Her hand shook as she held the phone. The trap had been sprung. They weren't trying to scare her. They were telling her they could reach Emily whenever they wanted. Her breath slowed. Fear folded into resolve. "Not while I'm breathing," she whispered. The soldier was back. Why did the school playground look like a battlefield when no shots had been fired? She parked far from the gates, hidden behind a row of sycamores. Children's voices floated across the field, high, carefree, carrying none of the weight pressing down on her chest. Parents stood in small groups, laughing, sipping coffee, waving to their kids. To anyone else, it was just another Tuesday morning in Oak Ridge. To her, it was a staging ground. Her eyes locked on the black sedan parked by the curb. Windows tinted, engine idling though no one got out. She had seen vehicles like that in too many cities, too many missions. They didn't wait without reason. Rebecca appeared from the side entrance, her hand resting protectively on Emily's shoulder. The girl clutched her lunchbox, smiling faintly at something her mother whispered. Brave, she thought. Braver than anyone her age should have to be. But bravery wasn't enough. She scanned the grounds. Too many exits, too many blind spots. The sedan wasn't alone. Another SUV lurked across the street, angled perfectly for a fast grab. Every instinct screamed trap. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Frank. Palmer stalled Shaw's bail. 24 hours, maybe less. Use them. Her pulse slowed, her breathing steadied. 24 hours to cut the web before Blackwood slipped free. 24 hours to keep Emily safe. She stepped out of the truck, rifle hidden under her jacket, body moving with quiet certainty. She didn't walk toward her daughter and granddaughter, not yet. First, she circled, slow, casual, a mother waiting for school to end, a shadow in plain sight. From the corner of her eye, she caught it movement in the sedan. A phone lifted, camera pointed, not at her, at Emily. Her stomach turned to stone. Rebecca hadn't seen it. Emily hadn't seen it, but she had. Her boots crunched softly on gravel as she angled closer. 20 paces, 15, 10. The man inside glanced up, startled by her sudden nearness. She tapped the window with her knuckles, smiling like it was casual. The glass slid down halfway. "Cute kid," the man said, his grin thin, his accent local but his eyes cold. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Drive away." He tilted his head, pretending confusion. "Sorry, ma'am." Now, her voice dropped an octave. "Before I decide you're staying here in pieces." Something flickered in his face, recognition, unease. He rolled the window up, shifted into drive, and the sedan eased away. The SUV across the street followed seconds later. Only when both were gone did she exhale. Rebecca caught her eye across the playground. A question hovered on her lips. She shook her head slightly. Later, not here. The bell rang. Children poured inside, teachers ushering them with practiced hands. Normal life resumed, as though danger hadn't circled like vultures. But she knew better. Blackwood's men wouldn't stop, not until they had Emily. That night they gathered in Frank's shop again, maps spread, files scattered, the faint hum of the freezer in the back room. Palmer leaned over the table, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. His face was drawn but determined. "Here," he said, stabbing a finger at the map. "Warehouse on 9th. Shaw's Shell Company owns it. Unused on paper, but heat signatures say different. Late-night deliveries, guards in and out. If he's moving kids, that's where they're staged." Rebecca's hand trembled as she traced the street on the map. "My students live near here, families shop near here, and no one sees it." Palmer's jaw tightened. "People see. They're just afraid or bought." Her daughter's anger flared, fierce and unyielding. "Then we take it down, tonight." Frank looked between them. "Careful, Beck, this isn't a classroom lesson. This is guns, locks, men who won't blink at killing." Rebecca met his gaze, her chin lifting. "And what? I stand by while Emily's next, while some other mother buries her child." Silence fell. She watched her daughter, fire blazing where she had once seen only pain. A teacher, yes, but more than that. A fighter shaped not by boot camp but by loss, by injustice, by love that refused to bend. Her chest ached with pride and fear. "We go tonight," she said finally. Her voice was calm, final. "Frank, you cover east. Palmer, get us eyes on the rear entrance. Rebecca, you stay with Emily. No arguments." Rebecca's mouth opened, ready to protest. But when she saw the steel in her mother's eyes, she stopped. Slowly, reluctantly, she nodded. "Bring them back." Hours later, the warehouse loomed in the dark like a beast crouched in the city's veins. Rusted metal, broken windows, shadows moving inside. She crouched by the fence, rifle cradled, heart steady. The old rhythm returned, the breathing, the stillness, the quiet counting between footsteps. Palmer's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. 2 guards rear, 1 on the roof, more inside. She scanned, calculated, waited for the moment when the guards' paths split. Then 1 breath, 1 step, 1 strike, silent, precise. The soldier's ghost moving through steel and shadow. Inside, the air reeked of oil and bleach, corridors twisted into darkness. And then voices, children's voices, weak, scared, muffled by locked doors. Her pulse spiked, rage burned her calm. She signaled to Palmer. He moved ahead, cutting the lock with quiet speed. The door swung open. Inside, 6 children huddled, eyes wide, cheeks streaked with tears. 1 girl clutched a teddy bear so tight her knuckles whitened. "It's okay," she whispered, kneeling low. "We've got you, you're safe now." But even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't true, not yet. Because footsteps thundered down the corridor. The trap had sprung. Why did the air inside the warehouse feel heavier than the desert heat she once fought through? The children's eyes widened at the echoing footsteps. Shadows swelled at the far end of the corridor, and with them came the metallic click of rifles being readied. Palmer shoved 2 of the rescued kids behind him, gun raised. She slid forward on 1 knee, rifle braced, breathing steady despite the storm in her chest. Marcus Blackwood stepped into the light. He wasn't in cuffs anymore. He wasn't in chains. He walked free, flanked by men armed and armored, his smirk sharp enough to cut steel. "You really thought it would be that easy?" His voice carried through the hall, smooth as oil, cruel as glass. "You hand me over, I walk out again. That's the difference between you and me. I own the ground you stand on." Her jaw clenched. She raised her rifle, finger brushing the trigger. "You don't own me." Blackwood chuckled. "You'll die before you see daylight. And the girl, your granddaughter, she'll grow up just like my brother's blood did, with vengeance in her veins." Rage surged hot, but she held it down. Rage made you sloppy. She breathed in, out, a soldier's rhythm. "Palmer," she whispered, not turning her head, "get them out." Palmer's hesitation was brief. He saw her stance, saw her resolve, and understood. He nodded sharply, waving the children down the hall. Their footsteps were fast, frantic, echoing into the dark. Now it was just her and him. Rebecca's face flashed in her mind, her anger, her forgiveness, her plea. Emily's small arms around her neck. The weight of all the moments she had missed. She would not miss this one. The gunfire began. The corridor exploded with sound. Bullets sparked against steel beams, splintered crates, tore through shadows. She rolled hard, came up behind a column, returned fire with measured precision. 1 man fell, then another. Her shoulder burned where the recoil slammed bone. She ignored it. Blackwood advanced slowly, calmly, using his men like shields. His eyes never left hers. "You'll run out of bullets," he called. She shifted, squeezed off another round. A guard crumpled. Her clip slid empty with a hollow click. Silence for a heartbeat. Then Blackwood's voice, closer now. "This ends tonight." She drew the knife from her belt. The weight of it grounded her, pulled her back into every mission where silence meant survival. She stepped from cover. And she ran straight at him. The clash was brutal. His gun swung wide, her knife flashed close. They collided in a storm of fists and steel. He was strong, older, but built by hate, every strike meant to break. She was faster, sharper, trained by necessity, driven by love. His fist cracked against her jaw, stars burst in her vision. She tasted blood, spat it out, drove her shoulder into his chest, sent him stumbling against the wall. The knife slashed, but he caught her wrist, twisted hard. Pain seared up her arm. "You should have stayed in the woods," he hissed, breath hot against her ear. "You could have died forgotten. Now you'll die remembered." She slammed her forehead into his nose. Bone crunched, he roared, staggered. The knife slipped free. She didn't think, she didn't breathe. She drove the blade down. It sank deep, just below his collarbone. His eyes widened, shock, then fury, then something close to disbelief. He staggered back, clutching the wound. Blood seeped dark across his shirt. "You can't stop it," he rasped. "There are others bigger. I was just the beginning." He collapsed against the crates, breath rattling, eyes burning even as the light dimmed. She stood over him, chest heaving, knife slick in her grip. For a moment she wanted to say something, some final word to mark the years of running, the decades of fear, but no word could carry that weight. So she stayed silent. By the time Palmer returned, the children were gone, escorted to safety by Frank's people. Rebecca stood in the doorway, Emily clutched tight in her arms, her face pale but unbroken. Their eyes met across the warehouse. No words, just the truth passing between them. It was over. Later, as dawn bled across the horizon, she sat on the hood of her truck outside the school. Rebecca stood beside her, sipping weak coffee from a paper cup, Emily asleep across her lap. "You didn't have to stay," Rebecca whispered. She looked at her daughter, the weight of years pressing down and lifting all at once. "I should have never left." Rebecca swallowed hard. What now? She gazed at the rising sun, the quiet streets, the town still asleep and unaware of what almost broke it in the night. "Now we build something worth staying for." Rebecca nodded slowly, silent agreement, a fragile peace born not of forgetting but of surviving. Emily stirred, mumbled in her sleep. She brushed a hand over the girl's hair, soft and warm beneath her palm. A small, fierce smile touched her lips. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts."